Ernest, are you back with us?
Okay, Dr. Reagan, the meeting is now live.
Great. Thank you. Well, I'm going to get us started. So good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Reagan.
Morning.
Hello.
I'm the chair of the Family Practice Residency Advisory Committee. It is 10:08 by my clock, so I'd like to call the April 14th Family Practice Residency Advisory Committee meeting to order. As you know, this meeting is being held via video conference. Please be aware, although that we're meeting virtually, this meeting is being broadcast via the internet. Before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome those joining via Zoom and ask that they observe the following etiquette. Please state your name before you speak. Mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Unmute it when you are speaking. Keep background noise to a minimum. We are going to ask that you keep your cameras on so we can be sure we have a quorum. So members, we'll begin with a roll call to ensure that we have a quorum. When I call your name, please respond to confirm that you are on the call. This is in no particular order, not my favorites. It's just the way it's laid out. So don't feel slighted if you're at the end of the list. Fred Unger.
Present.
Ruth Chambers.
Here.
Todd Dorton. We can hear and look. I don't see him. Okay. Louis Foxhall, we heard, was going to be joining us later. Brett Johnson. Mark Nadeau.
Here.
Zoe Wong.
Present.
Damon Schranz.
Present.
Dana Sprudy. I see her. I think she's muted.
Yeah,
There we
sorry.
go.
Yeah, I just was having trouble with mute, so I'm here. Thanks.
Outstanding. Eric Warwick.
Hello, it's good to see everyone.
Outstanding. Martin Ortega. Okay. And then, of course, Mike Reagan, I'm here. And I believe we do have a quorum. Is that correct, Ernest?
That is correct. We have a quorum.
So, members, as I said before, be sure to maintain your cameras during the meeting just so that know you're not asleep and that you are present during the meeting. At this time, we have coordinating board staff and invited guests on the call. We'd like for them to introduce themselves to the committee. And
I'll go first. Good morning. My name is Ernest Takis, Program Director for Academic and Health Affairs at the Coordinating Board.
I'll jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Silverman. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs at the Coordinating Board, though I am still in my lovely home right now.
it is a lovely home, Stacy.
Hi, Tom Banning. I'm the CEO of the Texas Academy of Family Physicians.
Are you in your lovely home as well, Tom?
I am actually. There were a few hearings that I was watching online, and a lot of health bills on the floor today, which is a good thing.
That's good.
Hi, this is Cindy Fisher. I'm Program Director for the Graduate Medical Expansion Program with the Coordinating Board.
Great.
And I'm Reinhold Cornelius. I'm Director of Academic and Health Affairs at the Coordinating Board.
I'm trying to make sure I see Cindy Passmore. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Cindy Passmore, and I direct the Faculty Development Center, which is the University of North Texas Health Science Center at Fort Worth in the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. Thank you for having me.
I know you don't need an introduction. Everybody knows you anyway, but thank you for making your introduction. Anybody else that we missed?
I believe Dr. Johnson is now on the call as well.
Brett Johnson has joined, yes. Welcome, Brett. And I believe is that it? Looks like that's everybody as far as I can tell. Oh, there's an empty chair in Brett Johnson's office. Maybe he'll join us here in a minute. Okay. Our first agenda item is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Do I have a motion for approval of minutes that were previously sent out, I think yesterday, for the November 4th, 2020 committee meeting?
Hey, Mike, I
Motion
was
to approve
looking
the
at the minutes and they look okay to me, except they don't get your name right. I think that should be corrected.
I noted that, but I didn't want to raise an issue. But yes, its spelling's a little off. That's true.
Yes,
Thank
sir. I
you.
need to, we need to correct 2 names on there, so I'll get those corrected after this meeting. Sorry
Okay,
about
so who's the other name?
that. Miss Wong, her name was misspelled.
Okay, so with those 2 corrections, do I have a motion for approval?
motion to approve the meeting minutes.
So
Second.
Zoe Wong, I got a motion for approval, and do I have a second?
Dr. Strand, second.
Damon Schranz has seconded. Any further discussion about the minutes? Okay.
It's Dr. John.
So,
Sorry, I was having some technical issues.
no problem, sir. We're all in that world at one time or another. So if you need any help, let us know.
Got it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, let's do the aye and a hand wave if you're in favor of approving the minutes. Aye.
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 Okay. Now, anybody opposed, nay, and the same hand wave. So that looks like a unanimous approval to me. Great. Thank you. That motion passes. Our next item is the coordinating board updates. And Dr. Stacy Silverman is going to provide an overview of current coordinating board initiatives and answer questions. Dr. Silverman.
Good morning, everyone. I'll keep my remarks brief, but I do want to let everyone know we are in the middle of the legislative session, and so things are moving along, starting to move along, as Tom mentioned, fast and furiously at this point in the legislative process. So just a couple of notes from the coordinating board. We have established a few things that you all might be interested in. Most recently, we developed a new division of digital learning, and I encourage you all to go out and take a look at our website for the OER, Open Education Resources that are now out on our website. And if you want to post courses out there or collaborate in developing new courses, please take a look at that. It's a new tool that we have that I think medicine would actually be interested in. So I encourage you all to take a look at that. We also have a new assistant commissioner. Her name is Michelle Singh. Dr. Singh comes from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and she's going to lead up the agency's efforts in the digital learning space. But I did want you all to know about that. In addition, we have another new assistant commissioner who is going to really head up our efforts in workforce. Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Nadeau, you have a question.
So could you give us just a little bit about what the scope of those courses is?
Sure. Actually, it's open to anyone and everyone. So you can post courses out there, go out and collaborate. The focus really has been on undergraduate education, but there's no reason that graduate level of education couldn't participate and couldn't use that tool as a resource. The vendor is, I believe we've worked with, oh gosh, now I can't remember. I want to say we've worked with OpenStax, and we've worked with another group. I'm going to pull up our webpage just to make sure I know what that is. But it is, you can access it straight from our homepage, and it is a great partnership that we've had the ability to allow for development grants and implementation grants. We don't have anything. Oh, thank you. There it is. And you can go out and you can take a look at it. You can look at the collections that are are out there. You can collaborate, and you can post information there as well. Ernest, if you'll go up and pull down that education level, you can see. So there's workforce, academic lower, academic upper, and graduate and professional. I encourage you all to go out and play around with this. It's a really wonderful new resource for institutions. And I did want to let you all know about that. Additionally, we have a new division of workforce education, and that space is going to be led by one of our recent hires, Dr. Tina Jackson joins us. She's coming to us from Dallas. She's had an extensive career in the workforce space, and we're just thrilled to have some additional resources at the coordinating board. So any questions about sort of operations at the coordinating board? And also we've changed the division name for the area that you all are in. And that is under my supervision. It's under my portfolio. It is now the Division of Academic and Health Affairs. So I'm very pleased about that. And thrilled that the agency is getting additional resources to do some wonderful efforts in really trying to, our commissioners committed to getting additional resources to make sure we get that economy rolling again and get those students out into the workforce as quickly as possible. So there's going to be some serious agency effort on upskilling and reskilling in the coming months as well. But happy to address any questions you all may have, and just happy to see everyone this morning.
So I have a question. As the world slowly returns to normal, I guess some parts of the world faster than others. Any ideas about when you guys will be back in the office? Has there been any announcement on that?
So there has not yet been an announcement on that, but we do have folks who are slowly moving back into the office. I'm pleased to say our commissioner's going in several days a week. My boss, Ray Martinez, is there about 4 days a week. And so I feel like as people continue to get vaccinated, once they've had both doses, they'll probably want to be re-entering the workspace. I'm excited to get back into the office. Although I have to say that my productivity level has been off the charts because there's no need to move from meeting to meeting. My calendar is backed up. I mean, you know, I have trouble getting in my steps during the day. Let's just put it that way.
You know, we're having conversations about that here, about who can continue to work virtually. And do you think there'll be some of that continue?
You know, I can't predict with certainty what's going to happen, but I do know that it's just, I think that just our ability to do things like these Zoom calls, I don't want to lose that when we go back to the real world. I want to keep the ability to be flexible and to be nimble and to be able to access folks from all across the state quickly and efficiently. I feel like the reduced costs to your institutions is just wonderful. So I really hope we get to keep that. And I feel like we have the ability to collaborate and really hear everyone's voice while on a Zoom call or a team meeting or whatever format or platform you're in.
You know, I always find I'm always torn a little bit. It is very efficient, and I would suspect that attendance is probably better on Zoom than in person. Is that true?
Absolutely, that's true. I mean, over the years, we've always faced a difficulty getting a quorum for many years, and we're at the quorum right now. So I'm just thrilled with that ability, and I hope that's something that we get to continue moving forward.
Okay, well, thank you for that update. Any other
Oh.
questions for Dr.
Oh.
Silverman?
Mike, I would just like to make, since we're talking about Zoom, not Zoom. So I think one of the reasons these Zoom meetings work really well is because a lot of us already have relationships. So I think that makes it more personal than if, 5 years from now, we've never met anybody because we always meet by Zoom. So I think as we move forward, we need to at least factor that in as one thought as we decide on what the right mix of in-person and Zoom is.
Yeah, I started my comment by saying I'm torn because it's efficient, but I miss the personal contact too. I think there is something to be said for shaking hands. I think Eric has a.
Hello? Hi, yeah, sorry. So I guess I have, I guess, two questions. One, with regards to the repository, when it comes down to the drop-down box for subjects, where would, I guess, this graduate medical education or medical education materials be stored? Again, there's several different subjects. I'm just wondering, I guess, will there be additional subject line added that is more specific to our field? That's the first question.
You're muted.
I believe you actually have the ability to create your own space. So you can go in and put in family practice and populate it with whatever resources you want. You can add groups, and you can make those groups restrictive if you want. You can, so it's really a space where you get to build your own. So.
And then the follow-up question, I don't know exactly where in the agenda it is to be mentioned, but I was just wondering, is there any update with regards to funding when it talks about rural medicine and the public health, and again, whether or not it was used or not used this past year for those particular rotations? I kind of remember somewhere that it was put on pause, and a lot of people did not have the opportunity to use those funds. I was just wondering, is that going to be in this session or the next session that there'll be some presentation about that?
I believe Ernest.
Well, I was going to say, Fred's going to give us an update on the financial piece. We're not going to make financial decisions today. That'll be our next meeting, where we actually do some decision making around that. I would say you're right that I reviewed the written reports, and COVID definitely threw us a curveball with some of that. It looked to me like, but I think Fred will talk a little bit about that in his report.
Understood, but again, the funding is again set out, I think, from year to year, and if there was a particular type of savings on one area, I was just wondering how it was going to be redistributed, if this year at all. So this is not a financial decision. This is more of if there was a cost or if there was money that was saved. I think there was some messages that went out over the year that money may be redistributed via other ways. So it's just, I don't know if that is going to be presented in this agenda or not.
Ernest, you want to comment?
Yes, we'll go over that here shortly. Okay, so I'll get into some of the basically a recap of the fiscal year 21 funding distribution, where we're at right now, and the potential for maybe the possibility of some money being left over at the end of the fiscal year. So we'll jump into that shortly.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Silverman? All right, well, thank you very much. Next up, Ernest is going to give us, he's the program director for the Academic and Health Affairs, the new title, and he will provide an update of the Family Medicine Residency Program and then answer questions. So, Ernest.
Okay, good morning. You should have a PowerPoint slide come up. Let me know if that's up there now. Perfect. Okay. So what I want to do is just give you guys a recap of the funding allocation summary for this fiscal year. As you recall, the total appropriation was $5 million for the FY 2021 fiscal year. We made contracts for operational grants totaling $4.7 million, so at $4,793,992. And that was awarded to 34 residency programs this year. We received 893 resident records, of which we certified and funded 880. And the difference there are the folks that are off cycle that didn't meet the criteria for full funding. So 880 was the magic number, and the per resident amount for those folks was $5,447.72. Of course, that number is rounded once the final allocations are run to give everybody whole dollars. Support grants totaled $106,000, and that was split up between the Rural Rotation Program and Public Health. We made 40 awards at $2,500 a piece for $100,000, and we did receive 3 applications for Public Health from Scott and White, Ronrock, the new program, and that was for $6,000. I think they have 2 residents currently completing that rotation as well. And then to round that off, we allocated $100,000 to the Faculty Development Center. Now, if you recall, as of November 4th, our last meeting, we had $8 from that initial appropriation, which brings us to this yellow box to the side here, the reallocation summary, which were funding decisions made at the November meeting. We had a total available of $17,110.62. Of which the committee agreed to split between Rural Rotation and Faculty Development Center. Of course, we made 6 additional awards for $15,000 and increased the FDC contract by $2,110.62. Those funding sources came from return of funds from some state entities and Rural Rotation cancellations from FY 2020. And those cancellations were due to COVID, location sites not allowing the residents to train there. So that's where those available funds were coming from. This year, we've awarded, we're about 7 months into the program, 8 months, and our cycle, excuse me. We've done about 26 awards so far, and those are folks that have completed their rotations. And we have folks still waiting to complete those rotations. I've received emails from about 2 programs that had to cancel 2 rotations so far. So that's $10,000 that we can free up. But we do have alternative residents that were not awarded that those potentially go to. So we'll just redistribute that money amongst those applications that are basically in waiting. I do anticipate, some additionals as I haven't heard from a couple of residency programs that indicated early that they might have some cancellations. They're still trying to confirm that. So I will have probably some better numbers within the next month for those additional cancellations, if that is the case. Any questions so far with regards to the funding summaries? Okay. Next couple of slides are just a couple of statistics that we collect off the roster report. We don't necessarily publish these, but they're items that we've collected over the years. Initially, they were part of the annual survey. I'm not sure if you recall that, but that was a paper survey that was submitted on an annual basis along with the roster report. So this is kind of a breakdown of what the resident population looks like in terms of this slide here is the PGY level. So about 34% is your PGY 2s, 34% PGY 1s, and of course the other 32% is your PGY 3s. This is a demographic slide, and of course the biggest chunk here is the white population, 20% Hispanic, 25% Asian, and then 8 and 8 for African American and other groups. The other groups is consisting of American Indian or Alaskan Native, folks who identified as international or not reported, and Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. And again, all this data comes from the roster report annually. This is a slide about gender. So females make up the majority of the group. And then this last slide here is the medical schools by type. So these are where your medical students are coming from. The biggest chunk being Texas medical schools, 30% of U.S. schools, and 23% from international schools around the world. So that's where your medical students are coming from. And I think that's my last slide. There was a couple other pieces of information, but wasn't clear on some of that. So citizenship, I think, was one of them also. And I think 95% were marked as US citizens. So that is additional information we don't publish, but we do have available. We do on occasion receive ad hoc report requests. So some of this information is utilized for that as well. Any questions?
I had one just about the distribution, PG 1, 2, and 3. That looks to me like that is potential growth of programs. Is that true, or do we know?
Do not know at this point.
As they work through
I'm trying to say it is because over the last 2 or 3 years, we've grown the program, of course, by 128 residents. So this program, of course, is going to continue to grow. But I don't want to get into that in this conversation. It's more suited for our funding discussions in June. Yes, sure. The program is growing.
And there are some very important questions that we'll be having in June. But
yes, sir.
That might be a allusion to that a bit. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Other questions for Ernest?
Yeah, Ernest, could you just put the demographic slide up there again, just for an instant? Yeah, that one. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I have a question about that demographic slide. Do you know how that is trending? Is that changing over time or staying the same, or do we have a feel for that?
I do not have a feel for that, sir. I will definitely put that together for you, since all that data is available. I mean, this is something that we have a collection sheet that I normally fill out, and I just thought to myself, maybe this is something that the community needs to see. But I will definitely put that together for you and have that available for June. For our June meeting.
Just a look, maybe 5 and 10 years ago, just the comparison, just to see if there's any trend. Anything that jumps out at you. If there's something obvious there, it'd be interesting to see kind of what that looks like.
Yes, sir. Okay, well, thank you very much. If you have additional questions, of course, let me know.
Great. Data is helpful, and that was nicely presented. Thank you. So next, we're hearing updates on a variety of different programs. The first one is a legislative session update. And I didn't check to see if John is with us.
No, he? Dr. Reagan, I just got word that he is not available. He's actually at the Capitol at a Senate committee hearing. So he will not be available for this meeting. I'm not sure if Stacy or Tom Banning are able to provide an update for you as well this morning.
Well, and I think Tom is on the agenda in a little bit, so we might defer to when he comes up. Stacy, unless you have something you want to add.
No, I'll chime in when you talk with Tom.
Okay, great. So we'll move on past that item then. Understand it's a busy session, and so that happens. Our next item is Gme Program update. Ms. Cindy Fisher, Program Director for Academic and Health Affairs, will provide an update of the Gme program and then answer questions.
Hi, I just have a quick update. For the Gme expansion program for FY21, we're currently doing our verification. For the 94 programs, we're collecting data from other programs. And as soon as we get that in, we'll start processing payments for FY21. We should start doing that in May and have those paid out by June. And that's all for Gme expansion. We are planning grant. We had a planning grant RFA that was released in November, due in December of 20, that we're still doing review on for the applications. We received 11 eligible applications. And so the review committee is working through that now, and hopefully we'll have that pretty soon to announce the planning grant awards for the fiscal year 21. And that's all the update I have. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question about the timing. So you're about to decide the amounts and what's going to get paid. So when when the money you're going to pay, is that for this academic year? I mean, or is this?
For the expansion grant?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So the expansion grant is the payment for 21. So July 1 of 21 for this,
Okay.
the second year of the expansion grant.
Okay. So it happens after the match. So they'll know before the match. So they'll know what the number's supposed to be, correct?
Yeah. So the match just happened in March.
Yeah.
So they should have their data. I'm just waiting for programs that maybe had to do some outside matches, outside the match, and to fill their positions to see if they're going to have other positions filled. And so we already have some coming back. I have about 8 programs that already sent their verification data in. So we're processing that now. And so as soon as we get the verifications done, we can start making their July 1, 21 payment.
So I guess my question is so this is for 2021. Do we have programs that aren't sure if they're going to get money, but they've already agreed to hire people, or is this just a matter of how many dollars they're going to get?
This is a matter of how much. They've already said that they're matching, and we just need to make sure that every position was filled. So it may be that some of them don't fill their position. So if they didn't fill, then their award will change. And if they don't refill those positions, some of them who didn't fill in the match might actually go outside the match and fill. So they send that verification in, and then we'll keep their award the same. But if they don't fill, the award will be adjusted.
Very good. Other questions? All right. Thank you, Cindy. Appreciate that update. So next, we'll turn to Texas Academy of Family Physicians update. Mr. Tom Banning, CEO, Executive Director of the Texas Academy of Family Physicians, will provide the committee with an update and be available to answer questions. Mr. Banning.
Thank you, Mike. It's good to see friendly faces, having spent so much time down in the Capitol the last few weeks. So, and that's not a criticism of any particular politician. And I'm going to try to be brief and give you all some time back because, as Yogi Berra said, it's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. And we're in the middle of session. I think we've got 49 days left until the 150-day session ends. Though I can guarantee one thing, and that is we're going to come back in a special session at some point, probably in the fall, to do redistricting. The question becomes, what other issues other than redistricting are added to that special session call? So, really just sort of top line things that we're following this session that I think that y'all would care about. And before I start, if you're really interested in sort of doing a deeper dive, I encourage you to go to our website, www.tafp.org. We've got a really nice piece in our magazine, which is under the news link. There's another piece that was posted on the blog site last week about sort of the speaker's priorities. But, to say this session has been strange is an understatement. Obviously you had COVID that, has taken a lot of time and energy and restricted the way in which policymakers were able to meet during the interim. When they started session in January, they put restrictions on who could physically come to the Capitol. They restricted how testimony was provided, but it didn't slow down their work. It just changed the sort of the rules of engagement and the way that we interacted, which was different in terms of how we used to bring in physicians to testify on budget items and other things that we cared about. You fast forward 100 days and, they still have testing sites to get into the Capitol. It's still sort of a ghost town. Some offices will allow you to come in. Some won't, but they're going to get their work done. And the one thing that they have to do this session is to pass a balanced budget. And, starting the session, or actually, I guess in the summer, the controller came out and projected somewhere around a $4 to $5, maybe $6 billion shortfall due to the downturn in the economy because of COVID. You look at where we are starting January, because of the amount of, well, two things. One, the amount of federal funds that came into the state, and two, the economic growth that began occurring in the fall. You didn't see that potentially large deficit materialize. So this session, and I think this was the first time, and well, in the 20 years that I've been doing this, 20 plus years I've been doing this, they really didn't have a significant supplemental bill that they had to pass. A supplemental bill basically fills the hole for the previous budget that they overspent on. And usually they underfund Medicaid to the tune of $2 to $6 billion. And because of the federal dollars that came in through our FMAP match, that deficit was not there. So it took a lot of pressure off of the budgeteers in the work that they had to do to try to craft a balanced budget. Another strategy, and I'm sure Stacy can talk about this a little bit, that the budget leaders implemented, I think it was around August, maybe it was September in the new fiscal year, was a 5% across the board cut in all agency funding, and directed the various state agencies to find savings within their existing budget that they, again, could use to pay forward, in the event that there was a concern about a potential deficit. The kind of the third factor that's really complicated things is the American Rescue Act that passed. When was that? I want to say it was 2 months ago. The third pandemic bailout that is going to pump somewhere around $27 to $30 billion in new federal dollars into the state. What's interesting is that the budget writers are really not utilizing those federal dollars for the current budget. They don't have a really good line of sight into what sort of strings are attached to those federal dollars, what maintenance of effort requirements are tied to those federal dollars. And they're very hesitant about pushing those dollars out with the fear of, one, the Fed's coming back and saying, you shouldn't have spent it that way, we want our money back, and clawing those dollars back. Or two, creating future liabilities that they would either have to raise taxes to pay for or cut those programs in the future. So it's really created this interesting and weird session where the legislature's basically moving forward with a budget as is, and they have almost a secondary budget with the federal dollars that at some point in the future they're going to open up and spend once they have better guidance from the feds on how those dollars can be used. So let's talk about the issues that you guys care about. Senate Bill 1 was passed out of the Senate last week. It really didn't change much from the base budget that was filed. They maintained the 5% cut to the family medicine residency program. Though they did increase funding for the Gme expansion program from $150 million up to about $199 million. So they put another $50 million into the Gme expansion strategy to maintain that 1 to 1.1 ratio of medical student graduates to first-year residency positions. So that's a good thing, and it's a bad thing. The House Appropriations Committee passed its budget last week. The bill will be on the floor on April 22nd or thereabouts. They maintain current funding, which includes the 5% cut, but they did include restoration of funding in what's called Article 11, which means when the House and the Senate go to conference and they're negotiating the bill, what the final bill will look like, they will have the authority to add money from Article 11 into the budget, which is what we're hoping to kind of get back to, is just current funding levels for the family medicine residency program. A couple other things, like I said, I'll be brief, that we're focusing on. One, codification of some telemedicine waivers that were implemented during COVID, specifically through the Medicaid program, to allow for reimbursement for audio-only services, and a number of other provisions. There's a bill up tomorrow that would create a public health infrastructure investment fund. One of the things, again, that COVID really showed us is we've got a lot of public health departments, including some of the state's own public health departments, that are running on 20-year-old or 25-year-old technology. Some of them are still DOS-based. They don't communicate with each other. In Austin, Texas, where we like to hold ourselves out to be sort of the, Silicon Valley 2, when you require faxes and then have to manually input those faxes in based on public health data, that is pretty old school. So trying to upgrade the technology around public health infrastructure, M-Track. So, it really is a two-way communication that can push information out to physicians. Could be, very helpful. Certainly from a state standpoint, having real-time information on, COVID positivity rates, hospital bed availability, those sorts of things was just not readily available during the pandemic. The last thing I'll touch on, one of our big hopes coming into the session was an effort around coverage expansion. Snowmageddon in February really sucked the oxygen out of the room on a lot of things, including coverage expansion. Even if we were able to get over the politics of Medicaid expansion or coverage expansion, we would have had a lot of work to do. But that kind of all melted away when ERCOT broke down and the PUC failed to protect the grid. There are a couple of bills that are moving forward that should improve the administrative complexities of the existing Medicaid population. For example, there's a 12-month continuous eligibility bill that's on the floor today for children. There's another bill that's on the floor today that would provide 12-month continuous eligibility for pregnant women, both prenatal and postnatal. You're looking at maternal health that really could improve continuity. But for that population that's not Medicaid eligible, that is making too little to be able to use the Obamacare exchanges, there's still a gap that a coverage gap that we've not had the ability to come up with a legislative strategy to address. So there's a number of other issues, but I don't want to take all of your time, and happy to answer any questions you have.
So Tom, thanks for that update. And I think it probably would be useful to let people focus on what they're concerned about or questioning. Dr. Silverman, do you want to add anything to Tom's statements before we take questions?
I'm just going to add that Tom did an excellent job, and I can't add anything to it to make it better. So well done.
Great, thank you. So questions from anybody?
So I will say one other thing, and we don't have a good answer to this, so bear with me. My understanding of one of the federal requirements for the dollars to flow to public education, so K through 12, is a maintenance of effort or a requirement that the state not cut and perhaps invest more money into higher education. So, you know, by definition of some of the federal requirements, that could create an opportunity to pump more federal dollars into things like the formula funding for UME or GME. Again, this is something I heard yesterday from a colleague at the University of Texas at Houston, who was having a conversation with the chairman of the Appropriations Committee that basically suggested you guys might be getting a lot more money than you expected, because in order for us to capture the public ed dollars that we so desperately want, we have to maintain or increase funding into higher ed. How they choose to do that is probably not going to happen during this session in the next 45 days, just based on timing. But they're trying to figure out strategies to ensure legislative input on how those federal dollars are spent. So, I hate bringing bad news about a potential 5% cut. I'm fairly confident we can get it back to even for the session, but using the federal dollars, there might be an opportunity to increase some federal dollars going into your institutions.
I think that's a sweet spot for us, Tom, talking about those dollars and what that looks like. And of course, I know it's speculation because where we sit, but it's a helpful update. So I appreciate that. Any other questions for Tom or Dr. Silverman?
Eric Warwick here. Indirectly, this affects family medicine, but medicine in general. Have you heard anything with regards to funding of the Texas Medical Board in and of itself? Just are they planning on doing anything to expand that or help with that? Again, just indirectly as a program director, I'm always concerned as to whether or not all our interns are going to be, getting their physician training and permit in time. I'm hearing from my colleagues that certain Texas Medical Board programs that they're wanting to get online, they can't get online because that staff is has a lot of limitations. And I was just wondering whether or not you had heard if they are planning on helping the medical board so that the medical board can help us better.
They're not going to be cutting the medical board, but they're not putting any more money into it. I mean, the medical board is one of those few agencies that, their funding comes exclusively from, it's GR, but it's supposed to come exclusively from physicians' licensure fees. The reality is, I think they take like 30% of those licensure fees to fund the medical board, and they sweep the rest of it to put into general revenue for other programs. I think that the holdup in terms of licensure is not necessarily resource based. I think a lot of it was just the fact that all state agency staff was working from home, and hopefully once we come out of the other side of COVID, they can go back to focusing on what their mission and job responsibilities are. So they're not cutting them, but they're not putting more money into them either.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Well, Tom, thank you very much, and best of luck. Keep after them. Appreciate all your efforts.
Well, I hope you guys hear this, but you probably don't hear it enough. Thank you for all that you do. Certainly over the last, year that was, I hope we never see anything like that again. But what you guys have done for your community and the patients, there's not enough words to say thank you.
It's been quite a year, hasn't it? I'm glad to be in 2021, looking for better things. That's good. Okay, so we'll turn to the next agenda item. This is an update on the Faculty Development Center. And Cindy Passmore, Executive Director of the Faculty Development Center, will provide the committee with an update and answer questions. Cindy.
Well, hello, everybody. It's good to see you again. And I'm with you, Mike. I wish that there was a little bit of hugging going on. I really miss seeing everybody. And this is a time of year when we see folks that we only see during this session and the TAFP session and Family Medicine Leadership Conference. So we miss you guys. And I was going to say, as Tom said, thank you, all of you who are up there on the front lines and the other folks keeping things running. I don't know what we would do without the brave folks that are out there taking care of the rest of us. We really do appreciate it. And I am glad to say I am fully vaccinated. So I was happy to get there. What I wanted to do was just share with you, I'll share my screen in a minute if that's okay. But I want to share with you this result of basically what we report on our annual report, and then I'll address a few questions that you all raised at the last meeting. I'm gonna, Ernest, were you gonna let me share my screen?
You should have that ability.
It said a host had disabled it, but maybe there, disabled participant screen sharing. Maybe if you make me a co-host, I could then do it.
Go ahead now.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the? That's, I'll have to find it just a moment. I thought I had it right there. Yeah. Do you all see that with no blockage? Or is there a gray box on the right? Okay.
Looks good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So as I said, I just wanted to share the via PowerPoint, because there's a few numbers in here that will be easier, I think, to understand if you've got something in front of you. So I'll share what we've done, what I reported for on the annual report for 2020. Same thing for where we are up to date on 21. And then I'm going to respond to a couple questions that the committee asked when you all met in November. I think Eric Warwick had asked about some actual cost savings, and I've got some numbers like that, and some of the other consequences of the pandemic for us and likely impact of the loss. Well, let me say first that what we do with the monies that you all grant to us, we use them to operate the Faculty Development Center to train family medicine faculty, preceptors, administrators, and resident physicians via the following programs: the Graduate Certificate in Academic Medicine Fellowship, which most of you are aware of and very familiar with. Many of you are graduates of that fellowship. The Family Medicine Leadership Conference, that for the first time in 35 years, we had to not convene last April. It was scheduled for the first week of April. We just couldn't get turned around quick enough to do something about that. The Chief Resident Leadership Conference for incoming chiefs, and some preceptor training that we do in conjunction with the TAFP twice a year. On-demand and contracted workshops that we do for faculty and residents at Texas Family Medicine Residency programs or departments of family medicine. And then support for staff presentations at conferences and meetings, resource and curriculum development, both that we use internally and for use with by our constituents, and just other consultancies. We have been family medicine born and raised, and we continue to have the majority of our focus on family medicine type topics or the other foundational pieces like resource development and everything. We spend about 85% of our time engaged in those sorts of activities. But we have, since we've been in Fort Worth, we've become more interdisciplinary in that we have some of our fellows particularly, and some of our chief residents and some of our outreach training is to typically more primary care specialties like internal medicine. But we've had a few different specialties that we've been involved with. We've had a fellow that was a general surgeon, and we had a fellow that was a interventional cardiologist. That was new for us. That was a lot of fun. But we've also had some interprofessional interactions. We currently have a doctor of physical therapy as one of our fellows, and that has been really great. There's a push for the interprofessional education and interprofessional practice as there is for the interdisciplinary practices. And I can really see the benefit because we learn so much from each other from when we come from different perspectives. And then have always worked with coordinators and administrators and that sort of thing. So we feel good about that portion of our trainees, that they've done nothing to dilute the family medicine focus that we have, but actually have enhanced a lot of what we do. So that being said, let me just hit our big programs. Last year, the Dkm Fellowship, we had 11 fellows who finished, the biggest number of fellows ever. 8 of those folks were Texas family medicine. There was one fellow that was from out of state, but everybody else was from in Texas. There was an internal medicine and the interventional cardiologist who's also internal medicine, but that was the makeup of that class. They finished in June of last year. And due to the pandemic, we held 5 of the sessions in person, and we had finished up at the end of February, early March. And then our April session and our graduation or culmination, the capstone session in June, were both held remotely. And we've been working from home since, I guess, the middle of March of 2020. And we've had some slow spaced return to campus. But one of the issues is that we're kind of out of space on returning to campus. So we're continuing to work from home and are working on a way to make that happen again. I don't know, many of you know that when we changed when the Faculty Development Center was opened in Fort Worth at the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine, I never moved from the Waco area. So I've been working from home for 10 years now. And so to the rest of you, welcome to my world. It's really great because you can be so productive and you don't spend time getting to and from meetings and that kind of thing. And now at least I have the ability, because everybody's Zooming, I can meet with everybody more often, but you really can be productive. But the issue that I've had to guard against, and I know many of you know this, that if you're working from home and you're at home, you're always at work, and it's really hard to stop working. So we try to do things to mitigate that. And I'm not real good at it, but some people are a lot better about compartmentalizing their lives anyway. So I'll move on. So as I said, this last year was the first time in at least 35 years that we didn't have that leadership conference. And I know that I missed that. And the colleagues I've spoken with missed it too. So we will be convening tomorrow, but virtually. And we have a very similar program to what we've had in the past. One difference is that instead of the full breakout sessions where we have at least an hour or so at least, and sometimes more, sometimes a little less, where we have the program directors and other faculty or chairs in one meeting and the administrators and coordinators in another, and then we come back together and share our lessons learned. We're going to stay together for that time. And we've asked programs from around the state if they will contribute to a sort of lessons learned from the pandemic, and what did work well for you, and what would you have done different? What would you like information about? And hopefully we'll come away from that with some best practices, some kinds of cautionary tales, some do's and don'ts, and we'll be able to make note of that and share it with the group. So that is tomorrow. And if you have not yet signed up, that's okay. If you haven't registered, there's still room for you. We don't have to guarantee any numbers as far as feeding everybody goes, so we're fine. We have plenty of room. We'll do what we can to replicate the camaraderie piece of and the networking part of that session by opening a couple breakout rooms where you can just in the chat or whatever invite a colleague into a breakout room to have a quick discussion that will maybe be similar to what you would have had in the hallway, because I know that for many of you those are the most valuable pieces of information that you take away from that meeting. In our last year with the Chief Residence Conference, we very quickly decided that we were going to have to hold that conference virtually. And we made a decision that we would not charge for that conference because we'd not done that before. We didn't feel like that we ought to. We thought we would just open it up wide, and we ended up with 139 registrants. And that's how many people showed up there. I think actually more people registered. We had 139 people come. We typically have 50 to maybe 65 or 70. So it was a larger group. We had 14 disciplines, medical disciplines in 14 states represented. And we had continued a tradition that we started in 2019. A practice that really paid off was we are having sharing the first day. The conference is a day and a half, like all day Friday and about till 2 o'clock on Saturday, where we're sharing that first day with coordinators and other administrative types from the programs. They're going to come in. They come in and participate with the chiefs, and it makes a lot of sense given that they share a lot of the leadership duties for the residency programs. We had invited program directors to come too, and it wasn't as valuable for them, and not as many of them found the time to come. I think we had a couple come the first year and then one the second year, but we're going to continue that in this ensuing year. At the end of May, we're going to do that again. But we really had a great turnout last year, and then on the second day, the groups split apart and the residents remained together. The chief residents remained together, and the coordinators. We have some of our Fort Worth colleagues that helped to run the coordinator meeting. That has been very, very valuable for those folks that have been involved. Let me stop for a minute and see if anybody has any questions before I move on. Okay. All right. So as I said, we had a big turnout, but we still were able to draw 65 Texas family medicine chiefs, which is a good deal more than we have been over the last couple of years. We might end up with 50 or 60 total attendees, but typically we've had around 40 to 45 of those will be Texas family medicine. Overall, we had 75 family medicine chiefs and 78 Texans and 25 coordinators, just to kind of give you an idea. And as I said, that it's a winning combination. It seems to really work well to have the chiefs and the coordinators there together. And the multi-state hasn't hurt us. We get great ideas from the folks that are non-family medicine and non-Texan, and they pay 3 times as much for their registration fee. So Texas family medicine, the fee is $200, and anyone else it's $600. The coordinators, though, we have offered it to coordinators across the board at for half the price, given that they don't typically have the same kind of educational funding, and it's worked very well. Preceptors, the Preceptor Workshop, we've been doing that with the Texas Academy for many years. And so now we present one in April interim session that is the basic skills. And then in November, we do the advanced skills along with the annual meeting, the Texas Academy of Family Physicians annual meeting. And the numbers that we were able to serve in 2020 was in November, we had 5 preceptors take part in that workshop. And then we had to cancel the session. And as far as our outreach goes, those are the services that we provide to folks other than UNT, HSC, or TCOM colleagues. We presented 18 sessions, which represents 212 encounters with our family medicine colleagues around the state. Just if you're not aware of the fact, we do, as part of our mission and part of the funding that the coordinating board has provided us, has allowed us to continue to offer for no professional fees to any family medicine department or residency training program, 1 half-day workshop a year for no professional fee. And we have just asked for our travel to be reimbursed. We've continued to do this outreach, even though we're not traveling. And so it's free when we don't have to come to you. We ask that you pay for any kinds of materials, offset any true out-of-pocket expenses, but that has remained a fairly popular and well subscribed service that we provide. That was for the fiscal year I'm reporting on. And this is where we are for this year up to date. It's the same programs I've just discussed, but the numbers for this year, we have got, we started the year with 10 fellows. At the midpoint, before we returned in January, 1 fellow determined that he was just too busy starting a new internal medicine program, and the tasks were just overwhelming. So he decided to stop and not do the second portion. I've since spoken with him, and he feels like it was the right decision. Although I think about him with almost every session, something is presented that I think, boy, that would certainly be handy for someone starting a new residency program. But he did reach out and ask if we could come and do some training for him, and we will train his new residents when he has them, do some orientation with him. So we have 7 Texas family medicine physicians of the 9 that are currently enrolled. There's another family physician, but she's actually in Las Cruces. And we have another internal medicine, an ER physician. One of our fellows is a pediatrician, but her role is as faculty in the Waco Family Medicine program. So we're counting her as Texas Family Medicine. As I said, we have the leadership conference starting tomorrow virtually. We'll kick it off with a legislative update from Tom Banning, which everybody enjoys. I think that many people come. That's worth coming to the session most of the time. And then we'll have some of our innovations issue sessions that we typically have. We won't have a one kind of a keynote speaker that as we've had in the past. We'll move into our sharing of innovative programs that membership has sent proposals to us, and we were able to resurrect some of those from the 2020 session that we missed. And so colleagues will get to share those things. And then, as I said, we'll have a kind of around the state sharing of what worked and what didn't work. And I think the participants will leave with good information, just as they typically do. We invite you to come and drop in and out as you need to for whatever their obligations are. But we have 57 folks registered. That is right in line with what we've always done. So we're pleased to see that. We're disappointed. This is the first year in I think for 3 or 4 years that we have not overlapped with the AAFP, the offerings in Kansas City that usually come at the same time, or that have been for the last few years, being held at the same time. The PDW and the RPS have been overlapping with FMLC. And so this year, that's not the case, but it had started to drive that coincidence had started to drive our attendance down. So we expect it to pick back up. Yes?
Cindy, I hate to interrupt, but I'm watching our time and I'm starting to get anxious about getting all the way through the agenda.
Oh, okay. I will speed it up. So, all right. As I said, we've got Chief Residents Conference coming up, 37 registrants already. That's a good number. We're unable to do the Preceptor Workshop, and we will do one sometime this year. We're working with Julia. So you can see those numbers for the outreach. The big piece that I wanted to make sure I share is that what we're saving. There are some fixed costs, salaries, speaker fees, materials. Those things haven't changed. What we are able to save is speaker and staff travel, facility fees, and foods. And so here, there we go. This is what I predict that we'll save, and we could save if we kept doing our sessions virtually. With the fellowship of the 7 sessions, we would do 3 of them face-to-face, and we would realize that those savings, so about $24,000 altogether by doing Chief Resident and FMLC face-to-face. But the stuff that remains is important. We'll have about $50,000 for those 3 just in absolute cost, but the really big piece and the way we use the monies from you all that's our salaries. They remain, and they will continue to be there, we hope. 85% of our salaries, as I said, we feel like that represents our family medicine focus, is about 235. It's salaries and benefits, 235,000. Our staff developments at risk at 25,000. About 2,500 for the resident scholarship, and then all of our services provided. What we would probably lose is the ability for our outreach programs. We might lose the resident scholarship and staff development, which is vital. We didn't do much of that last year, but that is again at risk. So what we've learned basically is that we're innovative, we're resourceful. We're fortunate to have the kind of incredible local support that we do have at TCOM. So I thank Dr. Lisa Nash and Dr. Frank Filippetto, the dean there, for continuing to support us, and you all who have supported us for a long time. We're functioning very well working from home, and that we can do this. We can build the intimacy. I agree with what Dr. Nato said about when you're familiar with someone, it's fairly easy to feel intimate in these sessions, but we have found that in our big 139 people session with the chief residents, and people didn't know each other, we were able to do what we needed to do and keep that moving. So there we go. Questions, and thank you very much. I'll stop sharing my screen. And
any questions for Cindy?
Hey, Cindy, this is Danis Brady. I just had a question about what the deadline is for the next academic year for fellowship applications, because I have another faculty or two.
Please, the deadline has not expired. That's the important piece. Is we're still taking applications, so please get them to me. All right. I think I have a name already, but please get them to fill them out soon. All right.
Yes, thanks. I just want to make sure it hadn't passed yet, because I know it hasn't happened from our side yet. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Appreciate the information.
Just before we move on, I just want to give a shout out to the chief resident training, which has been really vital for our group. So really appreciate that. And looking forward to the days when we can do it and they can do it in person. I think the team building on that is really good, but whatever you're doing, we appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I do think that we need to continue to have at least a virtual piece of that, because so many more chiefs were able to take part, I think, and will continue to. So that's all I have. If you all have any questions, and I'm sorry if I took up too much time, I wasn't watching the clock.
That's my job, so I hope you don't mind me jumping in there.
Oh, no, thank you.
Any other questions for Cindy?
Mike Hiley, Foxhall. Sorry to join late, but I finally made it. Cindy, great presentation. And maybe something you could forward to us at some point. I assume that in addition to the attendance number, there is some sort of evaluation survey that goes out to participants to kind of see what they're getting out of all this, and how you determine if the content's appropriate or something new needs to happen. So if that could be shared with us at some point, I think that would be helpful for us to kind of get another view on outcomes.
Okay, we will look at a report. I will say that although we provide an electronic evaluation to all of our attendees, we don't require that it's completed for folks that it's just, we don't require it. So it's not always well attended to. But we do pay a lot of attention, and we make changes when not every time somebody suggests something, but when we see a trend, we definitely address those in our training. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you all.
I think I have the next item. It's a discussion of the annual written reports. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about how the sausage is made. That's all the reports to read through. And that's my hen scratch to put together those stats. It is very interesting. It does take a bit of time. You should have received the written summary notes. I tried to really summarize the high points. And I'm actually, are you going to share that? There you go. Okay. And so I'll just walk through this, and then we can hit any questions if you have any. A few general comments I would make. Try as we might, I think people answer the survey with a different viewpoint in mind, and I'm not sure that you can avoid that completely. I'll touch on the areas where that is probably more prominent. First question was about positions, number of residency positions your program approved by ACGME. These are first year type positions, and the range was 2 to 24. There was a question about whether the program director expected increase or decrease of approved positions. And there were several different changes in position ones over the next 4 years predicted. 10 said yes. 9 of those were talking about increases in resident numbers. 1 of those was talking about a decrease due to potentially decreased funding. I think that was from their sponsoring organization. The third question was about the number of positions filled in the National Residency Matching Program. And interestingly, all programs reported filling all first-year positions. However, some of those were not filled in the match, so presumably afterwards. Question 6, this is a question that I think is very confusing for people. And I'll mention that the order, there's some missing questions because they're not easily summarized in this fashion. Question 6, types of arrangements or connections to medical schools. And I would say, I've been around family medicine for a while, and I know a lot of the programs, and I would have answered differently this question for those programs that had I been answering them. So I think there is some difference of opinion about what these mean. But the highest frequency as reported was affiliations with 15 in relation to medical schools. There were 10 that were listed as located and 2 sponsored. 6 programs reported no connection with schools of medicine. Question 7, was your residency program a training site for third-year students? Often the farm club for us for residents. During the fiscal year 2020, and 33 programs answered yes, that there were third-year students training there, and 3 reported no. Question 8, did you request funding from the Texas Medical School to support the clerkship training? This is another question where there may be funding, but it's not considered in the same way. I think there's some differences of how this is reported. However, 10 reported yes. The scope of that funding, again, this is very much open to interpretation by the reporters, I think, but the scope of funding was from $0 all the way up to $1.8 million 4 programs reported $1 million range funding. So I really do think there's lots of different ways this may be reported and how the reporter interpreted the question. Question 11, describe your recruitment activities to attract underrepresented populations. Many mentioned use of social media as a growing opportunity. Many said that the diverse patient populations that they serve attracted candidates, including programs that were federally qualified health centers. Many mentioned that their diverse faculty or other role models were important. Several mentioned EEOC rules from their parent institutions. Many said that residency fairs were helpful. Some said they have an underserved training track that was appealing. A few had specific selection criteria, not very many, but a few. One talked about applicant survey instruments used. One program mentioned that they have unconscious bias training. One program favors applicants that have lived in a health profession shortage area for at least 5 years or more during their life. Thought that was an interesting one. Question 12, efforts to meet the legislative intent of the program. Several mentioned that the pandemic really hampered rural rotations and other efforts that they had used to meet those intents. Many said that they meet by having either a rural or public health rotation site established, where it's easier for residents to get connected in that setting. Some actually required these type of rotations within their curriculum. Question 13, describe innovative programs, and there were many. I would say that this is kind of just a high touch on all of those. And some of them probably would be interesting to dig a little deeper on, but weren't captured necessarily in the questionnaire. Many curricular innovations, including procedural training of many types, embedded or longitudinal curriculum for things like lifestyle medicine, women's health, mental health, research, bedside ultrasound, international medicine, leadership training. There were many types of patient-facing social determinants of health interventions mentioned as well. Everything from providing food, TV program outreach, free clinics in many locations. One program mentioned becoming patient-centered medical home certified. Several programs highlighted grant funding to support curricular innovation. A number of programs highlighted community partnerships that advance patient care and residency training. Moving on to question 14, challenges. I would say, as always, finances top the list. New for this year were comments about impact on the pandemic on training. And that was really all kinds of things, including burnout and safety equipment, et cetera. There were also discussions about the impact on revenue, staffing concerns, redeployment issues, residents being redeployed to care for COVID patients. Shifts to online learning were predominant. Burnout and fatigue of the residents, as I mentioned. One program reported losing its sponsor, which certainly is greatly concerning. There were several programs reporting challenges in training in pediatrics or in OB or in both. A few programs said away rotations were not funded by the sponsoring organization, so they would subtract those dollars when the resident was away. That certainly would be challenging for rural rotations or public health rotations. Question 15, how can the advisory committee help the residency program? Funding was mentioned most. One group suggested sharing the report's findings. And that's really the reason that I wrote these comments down in this format so that it could be shared. I think that's a worthwhile thing to share the information might be helpful. One asked about specifically funding international rotations, and one asked about developing bedside ultrasound training for faculty and residents, really as like a state resource. That potentially could be something considered. Maybe the Faculty Development Center might think about that. That's an interesting question. I think ultrasound training is becoming much more frequent, and I got the sense that the faculty at this program needed that training so they could then train residents. And then question 16 is requesting contact from a representative of the advisory committee. We had a record number of those. We had 6 different program directors request contact. I reached out via email to those program directors and did not receive any follow-up correspondence to my emails. So I'm suspicious that maybe those emails landed in their spam folder. I don't know. And I'm not sure if it doesn't say what the issue is about what they want contact from. But this may be something to reconsider. It may be helpful even to have a phone number added potentially, because all I had access to was their emails. And so I think that those are the quick summary comments from all the questions. And I'll take questions if anybody has any.
So I'll just jump in, Dr. Reagan, and say that, we're happy to share those notes with all the program directors. We can shoot out an email with that information and just provide them with a quick update. And I think that would be great.
I would appreciate that. I think that'd be helpful. It might further stimulate dialogue and maybe more veracity in answering the questionnaire as well if they see some feedback.
Dr. Reagan, just to let you know, we did send out an email to all program directors and coordinators and support staff with these reports. So they should have a copy of that, but I can also send that again after the meeting.
Like there's a GME meeting through the TAFP that's happening Monday. I know some PDs will be on that call, but I will mention that this is available and that it will be pushed out.
I'm going to try and attend that as well. I saw that on the calendar, so hopefully we can answer questions if anybody has any for the program directors.
Hey, it's Dr. Johnson. Just to let you know, the TFP through the National Procedure Institute a couple of years ago did sponsor a bedside, like a POCUS training for any faculty that were involved. So maybe that's something we can ask them if they want to do a repeat on that.
It seems like there may be demand for that, at least based on the questionnaire. That's good. Thank you.
I think there is demand for that. That's a good idea.
Okay, well, so watching time and hearing no other questions, I'm going to move us along to our next agenda item. And my partner in crime on reviewing the reports is Dr. Unger. He looked at the financial reports and he'll give us an update on those. Fred, you ready?
I am ready, Mike. Thank you very much for allowing me to do this again. And hello, everyone. It's nice to see everybody, though it's virtually, but I'm with everybody. It'll be nice to be able to meet sometime. I know time is of essence. My allergies are particularly bad here in West Texas, so my voice is a little scratchy. Please forgive me. If you have any questions, then just kind of hold on to them until the end, and hopefully I'll be able to answer them in the best way possible. And thank you, Ernest, for sharing this. And we'll just start from there.
What a big difference. I know. I'm gonna do a little.
Go ahead. I'm going to proceed on. Okay, Ernest, am I on? Is everything okay?
Yes, sir. You're good to go.
Okay, guys. This is the annual report that was given to us by the Family Medicine Residency Programs, receiving coordinating board funds beginning September 1st, 2019 to August 31st, 2020. I want you guys to know that all the family medicine residency programs are structured differently, and they operate differently with different financial models and reporting systems within their various sponsoring institutions. So don't look at your program and compare it with another program that looks just like yours and wonder why the monies don't look quite the same or close to being the same. And so this report is important because it kind of helps us and the coordinating board see which programs are doing well and which programs are probably at risk financially, and see if they can reach out to them and see what can be done to prop them up if necessary. So first, I would like to commend all the programs for all the hard work and fiscal responsibility at a very difficult time, and how they've used the monies, the limited resources to be able to do so much work with it. So in the fiscal year 2020, the coordinating board funded a total of 814 residents. As you can see on the bottom of column B, 814 residents in 31 programs. As you may recall, the number of programs in last year was 26, and we added another 4 programs, which is the DTAR program in Victoria, Texas, UT Rio Grande Valley, the Doctors Hospital Renaissance, the Texoma Medical Center, and UT Tyler Pittsburgh Rural Tract. So I know some of you guys are already picking up 26 plus 4 is 30. And so I'd just like to let you guys know that the UT Health Science Center TCOM program splits consolidates its report between the family medicine residency program and the neuromuscular or musculoskeletal medicine program. So that's 2 programs in one. That makes a total of 31 programs. So as I go down this report, I will try to spend more time on columns that are really more meaningful and represent things that are common to us, and spend less time on some things that are really more program centric. So if you look at the total revenue column, this is column number C. As in previous years and as expected, the total revenues generated by each program varied from a low of $412,846 at UT Tyler Pittsburgh Rural Tract to a high of $22.9 million at the Conroe Medical Education Foundation program. These values must not be looked at face value, because there are so many different revenue streams and so many different variants are included in all these numbers, in all these dollars. And so we just need to bear that in mind, that some programs have more local funds than others. Some programs have more federal grants. Some programs have foundational grants and trusts that they can tap into. And so the monies look so varied, and some programs just have what they capture in their revenue streams from patient care, and that's it. And so I commend all the programs for all the diligence that they've done in financial governance, and I think we've done a pretty decent job looking at all these numbers, having a lot of time to review them very, very closely. We've done a pretty decent job in a very, very difficult year. So going forward, the total coordinating board operational grant was $4.794 million, supported a total of 814 residents, as I said earlier, with an average $159,799 per program. The largest share, of course, went to the biggest program in the state right now, which is the JPS program, at $388,702, and that supported 66 residents. And the lowest share again went to UT Tyler Pittsburgh program at $35,337, supporting 6 residents. So the coordinating board per resident across all programs last year was $5,889.40. So that's what every resident got in the year 2020 for medical education. Look at the operational grant reallocation and public health. This is reported as $0, as you guys can see in column, what is that, Ernest? I cannot see it. Column E, okay? The operational grant and the public health rotation grants were both reported as 0 because there were no monies expended in these areas last year. 6 programs participated in the rural health rotations. A total of $92,500 were expended in rural health rotations, with Texas Tech Lubbock, my program, having the highest number of residents participating, costing $27,500, and that supported 11 residents in the rural rotations. A total of $5,000 was spent by Spawn Corpus Christi program. There's a Christus Spawn program with 2 residents at a tune of $5,000. And the cost that was allocated for this was $2,500 per resident. So we thank you guys for that support. So if you look at the total money of the coordinating board total grant amount, it seems to be off by a substantial amount of money, which is about $105,000 compared to the coordinating board operational grant. These numbers should reflect the same. And if there's some mistakes that were made in the documentation, the finances, I can briefly explain it, and they will all add up in the end. So the UT Tyler program actually had some unexpended balance that was written there at 12,500 if you look at the original document that we had, but this is actually not true. There was zero money left unexpended, the UT Tyler program. So that's $12,500. If you take that away from the $4.886 million of the total coordinating board grant money, you end up with a total of $4.886,491 million. And that is pretty comparable to the original grant money, if you go earlier, which was $4.794 million. And so that $4.794 million does not include the approved rotation and public health money that was spent last year, which was $92,500. If you add the $92,500 to the $4.7 million, you come up with the same number of $4.886,491 million for the entire coordinating board total grant amount, which is the way it should be. Those numbers should balance, so it works out pretty good. And again, Ernest has done a good job of finding those monies for me where they were hiding. It took us a while, and finally yesterday about 7 p.m. we were able to find those monies and be able to put in the right location. So again, there was no money unexpended in the balance sheets, and that's been reflected as I just explained. As you can hopefully see by now, the coordinating board operational grant is one of the 3 fixed numbers on the spreadsheet. The other 2 are the rural health rotation and the grant and the public health rotation grant. And these are obviously approved by the Family Practice Residency Advisory Committee, which is our committee. But the ultimate determination of these figures based on funds allocated by the Residency, Family Medicine Residency Education, by the Division of Strategic Planning and Funding of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And that is the formula funding recommendations that we get every year after the biennium. Going forward down the columns, you look at the interest on coordinating board grant. There was no interest reported, and there should be no interest reported. That's column M. There should be no interest because if you have any money unexpended, you should not put it in the bank to gain any interest for yourself. That money needs to come back to the coordinating board. And then down next in column N, the Family Medicine Residency Program, the patient revenue. There are so many different ways of reporting this revenue, and some report as low as 0. And again, this depends on how their reporting systems are within their structures. And then some report very, very high numbers. Again, there are so many different ways that monies are collected. Revenues are reported within different systems. Some are public, some are not public. And so you look at those numbers for whatever they're worth, and then you can make the most out of them. I can try to answer some questions if you have regarding those numbers in the end. But as you can see, programs like Conroe, which have federal grants, programs like McLennan County, which have foundational money. I believe Baylor has FQHC type money. And so those numbers are going to be a little bit higher compared to everybody else. And then you have schools like programs like Scott and White Temple, Baylor College of Medicine, and UT Austin Dale Medical School reporting 0. So that does not mean that that number is 0. It's just because of the way the money is housed and the way the money is reported, they don't have anything to offer us as far as that's concerned. I'm hoping that in the future we'll be able to see some of those numbers, so we have an idea of how these programs are doing. The most important factor we need to consider when looking at how patient revenues are reported is to remember that programs have different sources of money and where they draw their revenues from. And so if we remember that, I think these numbers make more sense for us going forward. Next is the medical school revenue. Ernest, next, can we move that forward? The medical school revenue. Each program has a slightly different institutional affiliation with their medical school. And for those schools that have medical schools associated with their programs, from Dr. Reagan's report, there are 6 schools that said they don't have any affiliation whatsoever. And you can see this 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 zeros reported over there, which means that there's no revenues coming from some of those medical schools. And so the reason being that some programs are just affiliated with the medical school by name only and nothing else as far as finances are concerned. Some programs are housed within some medical schools, like our program in Lubbock, we're housed within the School of Medicine. And then even within the same system, the monies are reported differently. And the monies that are used to support the residency programs are also different. As you can see, the Texas Tech program, that is column A, 20, 21, 22, all the way down to 23. The Amarillo program receives $1.9 million, $1.1 million. The El Paso program, which is different from the main ship now, they have gone independent with the Paul L. Foster program. School of Medicine, rather, their number is pretty low compared to the rest of the numbers. The Lubbock program, our program, receives $1.8 million from the School of Medicine. And then the Odessa program, which is huge, as a matter of fact, bigger than ours now, they receive $1.3 million from the School of Medicine. So even though they are within the same system, the monies are reported differently and of course, garnered differently from the School of Medicine. Next is the hospital and local revenues. Again, I sound like a broken record, but these are also very significantly between among the programs, and different affiliation agreements are there between hospitals and residency program. And then you also have local fundings that are also involved in some of the monies that are being reported. And so some institutions receive tax dollars and local grants from talking to some of the program directors. And so look at those numbers and you can make the most out of them. If you have any questions, I think Ernest and I can probably try to answer them at the end. At the top of this category, which is hospital and local revenues, is Memorial Family Medicine Residency Program, which receives $9.3 million. UT Houston reported $7.02 million. JPS $7.5 million, and Christus Spawn Corpus Christi is $6.03 million. That is Christus Spawn. One program again reported zero, which is the UT Tyler Pittsburgh program. And when I look at that number, it really isn't zero. I have a strong feeling, and if somebody can correct me on this one here, that their money is actually reported with the UT Tyler main program, which is $2.44 million. So I think the Pittsburgh program, being a rural tract, reports zero, yet the main program reporting $2.4 million, which is likely how they house their monies in that respect. The next column is the hospital revenue and the local revenues reported separately. So you guys can look at that, which is the next. Go ahead, Honest. That's W and X. Which is a split of the monies between, those monies should add up to the column V. W plus X should add up to column V. And you can see that there's a tremendous variation from a low of 0 at UT Tyler Pittsburgh Rural Track. And then next to that would be the combined TCOM programs, University of North Texas Health Sciences Center, reporting $685,000. And then we have high numbers all the way to $9 million at Memorial Family Medicine Residency Program. So that's the split right there. Okay, and then of course the amount per resident, the federal revenue, as you can see, the federal revenue in column Z is only reported by the Conroe program. Okay. I think the next one is a revenue minus cost. And I think this is one of the most important columns here that we need to pay attention to, because this is really, we can kind of have an idea of how viable a program is. And it's tricky. As you can see, residency programs do not make very much money. And there's a lot of zeros reported here. And once again, it's just because of the different reporting systems. But of concern on column AD, these 4 programs that are highlighted in, I believe the color is pink, if not red. I struggle with colors, so forgive me for that. But 4 programs actually reported some losses. And this is the Baylor University Medical Center, the Conroe Medical Education Foundation, the DTAR program in Victoria, Texas, and the Waco McLennan County Medical Education Foundation. So we reached out to these programs to find out what's going on. And we got some explanation from Baylor. And the bottom line, just so I don't bore you with the details, is that Baylor has an FQHC that subsidizes the program's operating fund anytime they fall short. That was the report. The reason why this happened is because of the COVID really was a major factor in their funding, in their funds not looking right. For 5 months, the outpatient productivity was reduced down to less than 10% as clinicians were almost all moved to the inpatient care of the COVID patients. And so that money that's captured in the inpatient service is not kicked back to the clinic. And so they actually had to depend on the FQHC and hopefully some local revenue given to them by the hospital to be able to balance out their losses. The Conroe program also had $2.6 million given to them, the PPP funds. I think Alice can explain what that is if necessary. And that money will be reported through the SBA expected in Q1 of 2021. And so they are not losses are subsidized in this way. The McLennan County also has foundation money, and they could tap into that money to be able to keep them going for the losses. And of concern to me was the Victoria program, the DTAR program, the hospital system down there that had $1.8 million in losses. And they basically, from what they reported, depend on some district programs and some ACO monies, and to make that number a little bit smaller, and whatever else was left was basically goodwill from the institution that they're serving in investing in future primary care physicians. And so goodwill can become badwill depending on what happens at the administrative point. If you have CEO changes, CFO changes, board director changes, those kind of things, goodwill can become badwill or no will whatsoever. And so I think the three other programs are foundation money that they can depend on which are more stable, but this DTAR program is something we need to keep an eye on very closely going forward. So the total expenditure for programs. Again, this depends on the size of the programs, the size of the programs, the location of the programs, and the services rendered, and how the monies are reported, received, as far as revenues are concerned, who houses the money and how it's reported. So again, the highest went to Conroe at $23.96 million, McLennan County at $19 million, and Memorial Family Medicine Residency Program at $13.8 million. The lowest again was at UT Tyler Pittsburgh Road Track at $412,000, Baylor University College of Medicine at $2 million, and the TCOM programs, Family Medicine and Neuromusculoskeletal Program, at $2.21 million. So again, the total cost per resident, which is, again, highest at the Conroe program, McLennan County and UT Tyler, and lowest at UT Tyler Pittsburgh Road Tract, UT San Antonio, and the TCOM programs. And so you guys can look at those numbers and be able to see what I'm talking about. The resident cost, which is salary and fringes, the highest was JPS at $5.9 million. That's just because of their sheer size. The Texas Tech program at Odessa, also a very big program, $3.97 million. UT Southwestern Dallas, $3.38 million. And Memorial Family Medicine Residency Program, $3.11 million. The lowest, once again, was a Pittsburgh program, UT Tyler, UT San, which was $30,000. And I question that because that's 6 residents being supported. I think that number, if I'm thinking correctly and calculating correctly, should be about 180,000. And I brought that up with Ernest. I think we're going to look into that and see if this was reported poorly or in error. And if that's the case, then they're going to get that correction for our next report. And if there's also a good possibility that this is all that the institution where their practice in Pittsburgh is spending on the residents, and the rest of it is coming from their mothership of the UT Tyler program. UT San Antonio was also at 147, 613. Dr. Nadeau, I think that's also a pretty low number. If you look at the next column, which is the resident cost per resident. And so UT San Antonio is 147,613. And if you look at the resident cost per resident, is only 3,280. I mean, I think that number is a little bit low. And so again, we're going to look into that and see how it was reported. On the other end, you're going to see some huge numbers like the Texarkana Christus St. Michael Hospital program. We only support half of their 24 residents. And I believe from what I gathered is that they may get some support from the state of Oklahoma. And so the number is huge there, 137,951. And then of course, our Conroe program is going to be up there. JPS is going to be up there. But once again, it's just the way things are reported and how their revenues are reported and where they're housed. Next is the faculty cost per program. That just depends on how the programs, who they consider to be faculty and who's supported by the funding from their revenue streams. And so you can look at that and get an idea of what's going on. Of significant interest to me from what is left in the columns is the operating cost or operating expenses column. Again, this will depend on the sheer size of the services provided by the programs themselves, but I think it is worth looking into and discuss how some of these programs can keep the operating costs as such low at 1% for some of the products. I think it's just amazing that you guys can run so much and do so much 4% and such low single-digit percentages. And so if you guys can share how you're doing it and able to render so many services at such low cost, I think it would be something worth sharing with all the other programs, so we can probably copy what you're doing and help us out. Otherwise, that's really the gist of my report. I know it's a lot of information. Most of it is self-explanatory. And so if you have any questions, this is your time.
Any questions for Fred? All right. Well, Fred, thank you for that overview. Appreciate it. That's a lot of work to get through all that. And I appreciate your help on that. I'm going to move us to our final agenda item before adjournment, and that is consideration discussion of future agenda items and meeting dates. I will say that we have a meeting scheduled based on our last discussion for Wednesday, June 16th from 10 to noon. And same kind of format. And Ernest, I believe you have just a preview for us real quick. Is that right?
Correct. So we're going to try to schedule that meeting with the understanding that it'll be focused on the legislature and funding scenarios, the consideration of new programs. So there are lots of things to discuss for that meeting with regards to funding for fiscal year 22 and 23. So hopefully we'll have enough time to present scenarios and discuss them and move forward with those decisions. So I was trying to make sure that we allocate this meeting for these reports and then save enough time for that for the June meeting. So we'll have lots to discuss in June.
Yeah, and I think there are all kinds of considerations. We heard some reports about GME funding and other sources, the expansion grant, programs that become available to request coordinating board funding, the so-called double dipping issue that we talked about before. All those are fair game when we get there. So that's going to be an important meeting to attend and participate. Aside from those important discussions, are there any other agenda items that you recommend we should have?
I think we need to also remember that we have 3 programs that are going to be coming out for the fiscal year 21, which is Cotton White Round Rock, the UT Rio Grande Valley, the NAP Medical Center, and the Tigma program at the Texas Institute of GME and Research, which is going to be in San Antonio. So all those things will be eligible. All those programs will be eligible for funding. And so we need to at least have them in the agenda.
Exactly right. Yep. I think there's some important discussions. Other agenda items?
Dr. Reagan, Lou Foxall, might be helpful to have a follow-up on the programs that were having financial strain, possible financial strain that turned up in the report, just to kind of check in. We talked about possibly checking in with them and be sure things are still going well. So if there's time on the agenda next round, it might be worth getting a follow-up and kind of see what's happening, especially as we're beginning to kind of think about the funding situation. And,
so one of the tricks there is that almost every program said that they have financial difficulties.
Well,
so
anyway, the ones that look, either or I guess we just don't have to worry about it. But some of them looked bad on paper there. So I guess that was what I was trying to get at. If there's no need to, follow up, then that's fine. But just
the only thing that I can think of, at least in the written reports, now Fred may have some thoughts about the financial reports, but the written report, there was one program that talked about losing a sponsor, and it'd probably be worthwhile to find out more details about that. And Ernest, can that be done?
Yes, sir. We could definitely reach out to the program, especially the four on the AFR. Although they did provide explanations, it'd be good to kind of reach them by phone and kind of get a better understanding of what's going on with those numbers and their program.
Mike, you know, as I was reviewing this thing here, and I may be a Johnny come lately on this one here, but I'm really searching to get why must we only depend on funds that come directly from the state? Why must we be just sitting ducks waiting for whatever the biennium decisions are made? Is there any way? Is it Tom Banning? Who is it that can start tapping into, if these other programs can tap into federal grants, can tap into some local funding, can tap into funds or trusts that can help their residency programs? I mean, how can our GME, our committee, look into finding ways to fund medical education outside of the state? Is that even something that's legal? I don't know. Is that something? Am I speaking out of time, or am I Johnny come lately when it comes to this question?
You know, one of the things, and I'm thinking about it slightly differently, but financial innovation. So what is an innovative way that you fund your program? That might be a useful additional question to add to the future surveys. And then potentially we could learn more about those innovations and see if others can adopt them. Is that the spirit of what you're thinking about?
I'm actually thinking more of a centralized, you know, coordinating board, probably not coordinating board, but more of our committee, which is of course under the governance of the state of Texas. But outside of that, is there something that we can get? Is there funding we can look for? Is there a foundation that can help us support medical education in Texas in general? So that programs are struggling, we can say every year, you know, we're going to have this much money available to be able to help those programs at least balance out their sheets. Of course, we're going to require something back in return. But, you know, that's, I don't know, just innovative ways of not having to depend on the legislature to decide if we're going to be valuable, because they can wake up tomorrow and say we are zeroed out. What do we do at that point?
So my opinion, I think we should ask the question about innovation, and then perhaps the Faculty Development Center could offer that as a talk at a future meeting, potentially to help spread that innovation. I don't know about centralized. I don't think that the coordinating board or the advisory committee would have the purview to lead that effort. I think it would have to be from the professional society. That's just my take on it.
Yeah. Something to think about.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Dr. Warwick here. I apologize. I had a problem with my video side, but I'm just able to connect via microphone. I guess the question that I would have is a member of the CB, is there such a thing as a national organization that they're aware that they're a part of? So, you know, there's the AFP, and I know that my, you know, chair is part of a particular chair's group. I was just wondering if there is such a thing as a similar organization that they share amongst themselves in which they talk with individuals to the United States. Because I think one of the innovation things is, what are some of the other states doing? I mean, we don't have any access to that, or I wouldn't even know where to begin to look into that. But maybe there is some type of, again, innovative budgetary process that other states are using that could then be, you know, championed here in Texas.
Yeah, reaching out to the Graham Center might be a opportunity to see what they have.
So I'll jump in and just let you all know that I have been working with the state of California because they look to us for, which is kind of fun and interesting, because when I started my career, we looked to California, but they are now looking to us as it relates to the Gme expansion effort. So they were very interested in that, and that the funding and the support that the legislature has provided to that program. And we'll take a look at some other national landscape and see what other innovative ideas are out there. But I was really interested in Tom's perspective this morning about the use of federal dollars that will be coming in. And I would just encourage you all to work with Tom in that process. The agency is not going to be involved in that directly. So we are, though, here to support you in whatever way we can. So, and I was also pleased to hear that we have, that the House had funding in their piece of the budget to restore the program. That's very heartening. So, but I hear you, and I know that the issues are going to be even of greater concern. One thing I was thinking, and I've been trying, but we can think a little bit more about this, but one of your responsibilities is the approval of programs to come in and get funding. You do not have to approve all of the programs to get funding. So that is something to think about. I do appreciate over the years how the profession has really spoken with one voice, though. So I do understand that you all will have some difficult challenges during your next meeting, and really will start, continue to think about ways to help and serve as a resource to you all. So sorry to take up the time.
That's all right. Yeah, and I'm conscious that we're a little bit over time. So,
yeah, Dr. Reagan, sorry, just do we need to formally accept the reports that were presented, the financial ones?
I'll turn to Ernest to answer that question.
No, they're informational items. So
okay,
yeah.
This is
so really.
I just wanted to say that perhaps if you want to discuss innovative ideas and share some of that, we can make it a topic at the 2022 Family Medicine Leadership Conference. So keep that in mind.
That's good. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So one last call. Any other agenda items to be added for our next meeting? We're going to be talking financial decisions for sure. Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion for adjournment? We are at 12:09. I have a motion from Dr. Schranz. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Fred Unger seconded. All those in favor of hitting the bricks and going on to the next meeting, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Looks like we're unanimous. Thank you all for your attention and your efforts today. Appreciate it very much. We look forward to seeing you again June 16th.
Thank you.
Family Medicine
Thank you all.
Thank you.
tomorrow. So come to the leadership conference if you want.